Ja, dann herzlich willkommen zu unserem dritten und letzten Track unserer dritten TÜV Mobility Conference, in diesem wir jetzt eintauchen werden in das Thema Road Safety. Und dazu darf ich nicht nur einen sehr berühmten, sondern auch den ersten internationalen Gast bei uns begrüßen, von dem wir unser erstes Startstatement für diesen Track hören würden, nämlich über die aktuelle Situation der globalen Straßensicherheit. Verzeihung. So, we're going to switch into English right now, so please put your hands together now for the Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety United Nations, Jean Todt.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Bright and
Good,
clear.
thank you. So, if I may start, ladies, gentlemen, and friends of road safety, I thank you all for your attendance today, as well as TÜV for hosting this event, and I'm glad to be invited to be part of it, even only by Zoom. As the United Nations Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety, I take note that this year's conference focuses on Vision Zero to safe and sustainable mobility, zero road fatalities, and zero climatic pollution emissions. We have recently launched the second decade of action for road safety from 2021 to 2030. And while the immediate goal is to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries by 50%, the ultimate aim must always be for zero fatalities. It is worrying that after the first decade of effort to achieve these goals, we are instead seeing an increase in lives lost on the road. On the positive side, the efforts made during the previous decade have led to important lessons and results that we can apply to the next. This includes establishing a
Let's wait a second. Mr. Todt, can you still hear us? Aber vielleicht, damit wir nicht ganz still rumsitzen, ergreife ich jetzt einfach hier mal die Initiative und stelle schon unseren nächsten Punkt vor, weil wir werden, sobald Mr. Todt wieder da ist, hoffentlich in eine gemeinsame Unterhaltung dann starten. Deswegen würde ich einfach schon Sie auch auf die Bühne bitten. Lieber Herr Dr. Dirk Steenkamp, Member of the Executive Board of the TÜV Association and CEO of the TÜV Nord Group. Gerne, ja. Sie dürfen sich auch gerne dann gleich ein Mikrofon greifen.
First of all, welcome to everybody, both here in the Café Moscow as well as online. I mean, these things, I think we are all used that they happen from time to time. After 3 years of Corona pandemic incidences, so I think we have all got used to it. And I hope that Jean will be able to dial and to re-establish his connection again to us.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Otherwise, I will be your sole entertainer.
But that would be okay as well. The start was very promising. And then, speaking of digitalization all day.
But maybe to just make use of our time, I think it's very important to realize that from our programmatic, let's say, approach here for this mobility conference, that we have talked a lot about new capabilities, new technologies, and now somehow we come back to the human being, actually, and how we, let's say, still maintain safety for the human being. And just to underline again, safety is actually the core element of our DNA as TÜV. Yeah, I think everybody still realizes this, and now it's our task to still maintain safety for human beings when being engaged with mobility, also with modern mobility. And this, let's say, conversation with Jean, and I still hope that he will return back to us. This was mainly focused actually on the safety of young drivers and how to train them and how to do driving license examination, for example, such that they still not only be safe but maintain their safetiness, because the way how mobility is actually being applied today with car sharing, you frequently change the model of car. You have now really big experience with new car. You drive new models. You have to adapt to it, your brain also, and how you react and interact with the car. And this can simply be a risk for safety. And that's why we also have to adapt to these new trends of how mobility is actually used. And this is, I think, also an important aspect for Jean, with his, for Jean Todt, with his overall campaign of road safety, because simply the cars we drive, the way how we drive them, we share mobility. This will also mainly affect young, unexperienced drivers, and that might even overwhelm their capabilities. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steenkamp, and we can see Mr. Todt made it back to us. Mr. Todt, you can just jump right back in where you stopped, please.
But I mean, I'm sorry because I did not get any return. So can you tell me, did you hear my presentation or not?
We heard your first 2 minutes for sure, and then we lost you.
Okay, so
2030 would be a great time to jump back in.
Which one?
2030. The goals for 2030.
Okay, so I mean, when I was mentioning the launch of the second decade of action for road safety from 2021 to 2030, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and as you know, the immediate goal is to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries by 50%, and the ultimate aim must always be for zero fatalities. It is worrying that after the first decade of effort to achieve these goals, we are instead seeing an increase in life lost on the road. On the positive side, the efforts made during the previous decade have led to important lessons and results that we can apply to the next. This includes establishing a range of tools and road safety community more cohesive than ever before, which is why I believe our 2030 challenge is much more achievable than it was in the past. And it must be achieved. Road traffic crashes, as we all know, kill 1.3 million people every year. The majority are vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. And connected with our themes here today, road crashes are the #1 killer of young people aged 5 to 29 years old, and air pollution kills about 7 million people annually, with a large number of those deaths linked to pollution from road traffic. Knowing these alarming facts, all governmental and international decision makers, like so many of you here today, must act quickly. While it is true that 92% of traffic crash fatalities occur in developing countries, here in Europe, there is both plenty of work and many more benefits to come from continuing to improve our transport systems. For example, according to the European Transport Safety Council, there was a 37% decrease in traffic fatalities in the European Union countries over the last 10 years. The monetary value of human losses that were avoided by preventing these road deaths was estimated at approximately 156 billion euro for the EU countries. Just imagine the further saving that can be made if we decrease fatalities even more. Still, the biggest opportunity to achieve our worldwide targets lies with supporting the most affected countries to transform their infrastructure and road safety culture. Applying the safe system approach and strong regulations are central to this. When we speak about driver licensing, for example, it is also a big issue in many developing countries. So is access to UN safety standard motorcycle helmets and standardization between car technologies around the world, and especially the inferior quality cars passed to less developed countries. Young drivers, the theme of the discussion today, are important players in paving a safe mobility ecosystem. One way to improve their chances is to promote the understanding and choice of safer vehicles via consumer information, which might include an easily understandable standard system. This could also work by putting incentives in place to make safer cars and safety technologies more attractive and accessible to young people. To conclude, I'd like to encourage you to attend the UN high-level event on road safety, which is going to take place in New York at the end of June. It will provide another great opportunity for bold changes and help mobilize resources to save lives. This is the first time that we will have a high-level meeting on road safety, and we need it to be a success. And really, I count on your support, and I look forward to the next part of the discussion, and sorry for the inconvenience for the first part. Thank you.
Good. I think we can, yes, grant this with a round of applause. First of all, thank you for your impetus here. Very great start for our conversation to start now, and I would love to come to New York at the end of June. Maybe we can make that work. Let's focus now on the road safety of young drivers, which you already initiated for us. The first question I would like to ask to you actually, and Mr. Dirk Steenkamp, who joined me while you were offline for a second here. He's with us on the stage already. I would like to know first, why are young drivers still a high-risk group on our roads? Maybe you would like to start, Mr. Todt.
I mean, simply, you know, a young driver needs to be educated. And if there is no education, and I will say mainly on the developing world, it can really be a strong problem. And that is why, I mean, you know, as you learn mathematics, English, German, or French, you must be educated how to behave on the road. And in a way, if you are, as a young kid, educated on the road, you will be also a support for the driver with driving the car or with driving the motorbike, because you will reminding the speed, you will remind him to buckle the safety belt, eventually also to wear one helmet. So education for a young user of the road is absolutely essential.
Thank you very much. And you also mentioned the accessibility, that is a crucial part too. Mr. Steenkamp, what's your take on the reason for young drivers to still be a high-risk group here?
So maybe just before I outline on the topic itself, I would like to say hello to Jean. I met him 2 times already, one time virtually and one time at a Green Tech conference here in Berlin. That's some years ago. But I would like to state that I've always been a big fan of Jean Todt as one of the strategic masterminds of motorsports. Yeah, so I'm highly appreciated to have you here with our mobility conference, and my very best personal regards to you. With respect to your question.
Thank you for your kind words. And again, my pleasure to be able to participate to this important meeting.
So with respect to your question, I think Jean already pointed out when it comes to, in particular, young drivers, it's important to recall how the human brain learns, and learning most oftenly is simply done by repetition. And what do we mean by when we call somebody experienced? It's exactly that he has gone through a training series of frequent repetition of the same doings, the same brain experience, what he sees, how his brain is processing information, and that finally makes you a good driver or a bad driver. I think it's very important to still recall that the education of young drivers is of fundamental importance for road safety. And this is exactly why, for example, we in Europe, and I think in particular in Germany, have built up to a very high level of quality in terms of driver license training, both theoretically as well as practically. And I think Jean will join me in simply stating that this is one of the key fundamentals to really build up a group of experienced young drivers which represent a much lower risk, both to themselves as well as to other active participants in traffic. And I think that's simply something we even further have to strive for, because also the way how mobility is used by young people, sharing a lot of different cars in terms of car sharing, not have the ability to really get used to a car like maybe my generation has still done when you drive the same car for, let's say, 5 or even 10 years. These times have gone, and that makes it even more important to have a fundamental and high quality education and training of young drivers.
So, Mr. Todt, my follow-up question.
If I may add something, I mean, the driving license, you know, I mean, in developed countries like Germany, Switzerland, France, I mean, there is a real process of getting the driving license, which is unfortunately not the case in the developing world. You know, or you don't have a driving license, and sometimes, very often, when you have it, you have bought your driving license, so there is no experience, and that's something which needs to be discussed also with the governments of those countries.
Definitely, that was actually what I was going to ask next. If we focus on the educational part so much here, and we're still not regarding road deaths at the situation where we would like to be, what do we have to change in the licensing system in order to actually reach zero road fatalities or road deaths?
So, I mean, you know, I mean, road crashes is a pandemic, and contrarily to some other pandemic, I mean, we have the vaccine, we have the prescriptions. It's around education. We just spoke about education, law enforcement, which is absolutely essential, and unfortunately, which do not occur in the developing world, where, as I said earlier, we have 92% of the victims in those countries. It's also the level of the car, the quality of the cars, the technology of the cars with all the electronic devices which are available, and the road infrastructure, and the post-crash care. So that's what needs to be addressed. And incidentally, it has been addressed in the European countries, because when we are talking about Germany, France, UK, Italy, I mean, those countries with about same level of population over the last 40 years, the number have been divided by 4 to 5, with the number of users which has been multiplied by 3. So it means we have the prescription, and we must make sure that the prescription is enforced.
Very true. Thank you very much, Mr. Todt. I would like to build on what he just said now, Mr. Steinkamp. So he mentioned the quality and the safety of the car, of the hardware, basically here. If we're speaking, or we have been speaking throughout today, the course of today, about how important automatic driving in vehicles will be for the future of the mobility, how will they impact the safety of the young peers on the tracks that we've just started to speak about?
So I think, first of all, we have to realize that nowadays we are not at level 5 of automated or assisted driving. So modern cars, yes, they have assisting features like a brake or lane assistant, But sometimes, yeah, at least when I start to use a new car with such features, I really have to get used to it first. So I have to, let's say, train my brain how this car reacts, and it simply needs a lot of experience still. Yeah, so I think it's simply dreaming to think about that somebody inexperienced when entering a modern type of car will be immediately and per guarantee be a safe driver. This is not the case. So that's exactly why we think, yeah, that for example, when it comes to Germany, there are two possibilities, yeah, to make young drivers even more experienced. First of all, we have the mode of so-called accompanied driving. That means that you can start with 17 years and you have 1 year of, so to say, test driving with your mom, dad, sister, who already holds a driving license. And this could, for example, be lowered to 16 years, such that you have 2 years of accompanied driving. Another way would be, for example, that we prolong the so-called probation period, which is now 2 years. We could prolong it also to 3 years, or and that, for example, that you can reduce, however, your probation period actively, yeah, when you undergo specific trainings. Yeah, so you take a Saturday or whatsoever, you take your new car with assisting features, yeah, and you simply drive it on a wet track, but under controlled environmental conditions with a trainer, and I think thereby we could also tremendously make driving safer than it is today.
Thank you. I would like to ask one more question to you, Mr. Todt, regarding the automated vehicles and cars. Would you say that if mobility changes to a point where these automated vehicles are reality and normality, will we still need the type of driving license and the licensing system that we're facing today?
I mean, maybe one word to the previous question. I feel, a great opportunity if to use a special space like circuit where you learn how to drive. Because here you have the safety on the circuit, you have all the facilities which are available. You don't have other road users. So that's in kind of extreme situation. And you can also make the track humid, which allows to test your skills and the potential of the car in those situations. Maybe one more word on that. All the modern cars are equipped with electronic stability control and a lot of technology, and very often you don't know what you have available on your car. So before driving your car, you should know what is available and what you can expect from your car. And I mean, it comes to your question you just raised now. When we speak about autonomous car, yes, I mean, it's something which will come in the rich countries. But, it is very essential to remind what we said earlier. 92% of the victims are occurring in the developing world. In those countries, the age of the car is between 20 to 50 years old. So you can imagine that here it's not a question to know when it will occur. It will take a lot of time. So that's why we need to give to those countries access to technologies which is existing now since a while, and again, like EBS, like ESC, and all that. Coming back to autonomous car, I do believe that nevertheless, even in the developed world, it will take time, and I think it is probably going to be used quite quickly in cities for public transportation, probably also in airport to go from one terminal to another terminal. I think it will come very quickly. I think it will take much more time to be able to expect to see cars without drivers on normal roads, on long trips. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I found so interesting also about your statement was the fact that you have to know your car, as in, you know, as we're speaking about digitalization, as we're speaking about developing the systems in the car, you have to actually know the software that you're working with. Mr. Steenkamp, so will there be a greater need for like lifelong learning system regarding the licensing if we're looking at what Mr. Todt just addressed?
Yeah, so I believe definitely yes, because so I would regard myself as an experienced driver. However, when you enter a new car and you have the opportunity, when you take a rental, yeah, you have to learn yourself, yeah, first of all, make yourself familiar with this car. What type of assisted features does it have? Yeah, how can I turn them on and off? Yeah, because sometimes I even get irritated myself when I start driving and I feel that the wheel is not free, but it starts to interact with whatever in the surrounding. And I think this even clearly demonstrates that there has to be a lifelong learning. And however, we also have to convince people that when you enter let's say, newly developed car, please make yourself familiar with this car. It's exactly what Jean just pointed out in his former statement. Yeah. So I still believe, and we still believe, that there has to be a lifelong learning, but because there will still be, let's say, 10 years at least ahead before we enter maybe level 4 or even level 5 of completely autonomous driving, yeah. But up until then, complexity of cars will further increase. Yes. It will not decrease, yeah. And this even makes it more important, yeah, to learn about the capabilities of your car, to learn about the assisted features you can use or you yes. cannot use, yeah. And I think this simply demonstrates that. Yes, there has to be a lifelong learning because technology is not becoming simpler, yeah. but it's becoming more complex.
Thank you, Mr. Steenkamp. Mr. Todt, would you like to add one final statement to this question?
No, I think it has been quite well covered. Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Mr. Todt. Thank you very much, Mr. Steenkamp, for this lovely discussion, for this important discussion on road safety, especially for the young drivers. Please give it up for my two speakers here.